Hello, friends, and welcome to another week of the Launch Sequence podcast, your best place for some Star Citizen news and, I guess, a little bit of other stuff. This week I've got with me the co-founder of my org and good friend Drazen and/or / Matt, as it says on the screen for those of you just listening. How you doing, dude?
Doing great, man. How have you been?
Pretty good. Been busy, but good. So today we've got a bit of a juxtaposition to last week's episode. Last week we were on with Sexy Biscuit, and she had a lot to say about how much the game really can draw you in as a newcomer and show you all the amazing things you can do. And we talked about how much fun this game can be to play, but we also acknowledged that it has some problems. This week, my good friend here is going to talk a little bit more about why he hasn't been playing for a little while. Drazen's been around for a while. He's been playing for years, but honestly hasn't been playing. I think most of 3.14 you didn't play, right? And you were talking about 3.15 not really getting you interested.
Yeah. I played for about a month or so into 3.14, and 3.15 just hadn't been doing it for me so far, from what I've heard.
So a bit of a different angle. So we're going to talk a bit about that. But before we do get into that, let's warm the waters. Let's talk a little bit about what you've been playing, what's been going on, and before we do get started, I forgot to introduce my own self. I am Space Tomato, obviously the host. My name is Keenan, and I've been going by that on the podcast for the past few weeks. But for those who might hear it every once in a while and not understand, that is what people tend to call me. So without further ado, let's get into it. What have you been playing besides Star Citizen, apparently?
I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends. I mean, a bunch of new games have come out in the past couple months. None of them have really caught my focus. Of course, between you and I, our eyes on the pie in the sky, Halo Infinite. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, just trying to play other shooters to keep me in that mood. And one of those has been Apex Legends, and they actually just started their new season about a day or two ago. So,
okay, that's cool. Mm-hmm. So, we were talking about Elite Fire Team, or Aliens Elite Fire Squad Fire Team earlier in the summer, and you played it for a bit. Did you stick with it for very long, or it sounds like you kind of fell off?
Well, I was playing with our good friend Execute and SA from the Info Runners. Shout out to them. And we played it for about 3 weeks to a month. We blasted through all of the difficulties and essentially beat the game as far as what the game is right now. Yeah. And I guess the replayability for me just wasn't there. All the levels are very well designed, but I think the replayability of them isn't really there. It's just make it a little spicier, making it more difficult in certain ways. So I played it. I mean, it took a month of my time up, and now it's kind of on the back burner until they release a new update to add another chapter or two. So
yeah, I really hope that we can get something that's more in line with. There's a lot of cool sci-fi stuff in development right now, but I still feel like there's still not that much on the market that I'm interested in. Like there's Star Citizen, I've got my eyes on the distant Starfield, and there's rumors of a new Perfect Dark game coming out, and that would be cool. But I still feel like there's more space. I heard there's a new big update to Everspace too. I don't know if you've played that game. It's another one that's similar to Star Citizen, and I haven't heard too much firsthand account of how good it is. But I heard it's a big one, and I might consider checking that one out. You don't play any other space sims, though?
No, I tried Elite Dangerous, I want to say, a little while ago, more than a year ago, which wasn't my thing. Yeah, I don't really play any space sims. I play space RTSs, so, Halo Wars and a few other games like that of the RTS style for space games. Yeah. But Alien Elite Fireteam was just the most recent non-Star Citizen, non-Halo space game that I've played.
So are you looking at Falling Frontier?
I am, yeah. Are you thinking about getting into it pretty heavily?
Yeah, I think I will definitely try it out. I'm still waiting for it to get to a place where it's going to be more accessible, but it looks very interesting to me. I'm excited for that one.
Starfield for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yes,
Did you see the new update as well for Starfield? The information that they put out.
Yes, yeah. I wanted to.
So cool, dude.
Wanted to do a video on that. Just it was not a good time. It was like right before CitizenCon, I think. So it was just there was no time to do that. But an interesting one, and it's cool to see that they're trying to flesh out the locations and sort of build this diversity in the different areas you'll go, but it really doesn't say much. I mean, for all we know, this could be entirely lore and have nothing to do with something that goes on in the game. And that's what I've, over the years, I think started to get drilled into my head, is that's just like, don't trust the marketing anymore. So it goes for Starfield, it goes for Halo, it goes for Star Citizen. It's hard, but they put this stuff out, and my first reaction is like, I need to temper my expectations immediately, because I sit here and they're talking about, oh yeah, we've got this like crazy city where everybody goes to party and it's always awake and you can get into here, and like there's this cool black market, and you're thinking, well, okay, so I'm gonna be able to get involved with this stuff, I'm gonna be able to trade and like smuggle something in. No, probably not. Probably just the backdrop. Yeah. So I'm very excited. I'm very, very cautiously optimistic about Starfield, and I know plenty of people don't trust that Bethesda can do anything good anymore. So it's not like we have the urge to push them forward. We'll see what comes of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. But moving on from those games, we touch lightly on other games. People, we know what the people like. Let's talk about Star Citizen a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And the main thing that I said I wanted to bring up was your lack of excitement for the game. Let's start with that. When do you feel like you really started to not want to jump in all the time anymore?
Well, I feel like I've felt that for the past probably 2 patches. I want to say, 3.12, I think I started getting an onset of Star Citizen fatigue, whatever you'd call it. Starting in 3.12, I would take breaks that would be no longer than a week, maybe 2 weeks at a time. 3.13, it was about the same. 3.14, this past patch, I haven't, in all honesty, I haven't touched Star Citizen in probably over a month now. And I have no feeling to hop back into 3.14, especially when 3.15, when the next patch is around the corner, people just don't have that motivation to play the current patch, because it's like, well, everything's going to get wiped, especially in this scenario. So I haven't touched Star Citizen in over a month. Just been doing a lot of administrative work for the org and helping you out with the brand, and just no urge to do that. I just watch streamers play the PTU. I'm a person who doesn't play the PTU myself. I like to have a fresh experience when it hits live, because I know burnout is real for me as a more veteran player.
Yeah.
So knowing myself in that sense, I just wait until it hits live. But I'm already feeling like I've seen so much of 3.15. I already feel burnt out, and I haven't even played any of it, So
is it, what exactly is it that burns you out then? Is it a lack of gameplay? Is it too many glitches? Is it just not an expansive enough game? Like what makes you feel like you just want to take a step away? I've seen some people honestly talk about how like they're just sick of waiting for the actual gameplay, whereas other people were just talking about it's just the 30Ks that ruin it.
I mean, well, we all know the 30Ks are going to be pretty much mitigated in 3.15, which is a step in the right direction. But Sometimes. You're definitely one that's a bit more prone to getting those, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it just boils down to the medical gameplay that they've decided to implement. Maybe the timing's a bit off with it, but, when people say, let's hop on and play Star Citizen, the first thing I ask them is, hey, do you have 2 to 3 hours to set aside to play this game right now? They say, oh, well, what do you mean? We can't just hop in and play? And I feel like that's going to be more of an issue now than it has been in the past, where it's like, no, you kind of have to. Do you want to deal with those repercussions when you hop into the game in a couple weeks from now, when you decide to hop back in, and when you only played for an hour and decided to log off in the middle of nowhere? Now you have to claim your ship. Now you have no armor. Now you have no medical items, because all of those are gone, and go through all those headaches. Or are you going to set aside the time to make sure you're meaningfully parking your ship in a safe space, storing it, making sure your gear is taken off of you and stored away, or however you'd like to handle that? It's definitely making it a little bit less accessible for the more casual players who just want to hop in, play Star Citizen for an hour or two every other week. You're definitely going to have to set aside a lot more time. So I think for me, that's why I'm not looking forward to getting into 3.15, but why I haven't gotten into 3.14 in a while. just, I guess, a lot of that fatigue of just no real gameplay loops being added. I'm really excited for salvage coming along, but transportation, doing all of that for selling has been messed up with this previous patch. The FPS missions have been fun, but they're definitely overly challenging, and just
Overly
kind of
broken.
overly broken. Yeah, would probably be a better word. The fatigue is set in. Even the gameplay loops that we do have, a good handful of them, the fun ones at least, and the profitable ones, are kind of wonky right now. So it's like, well, geez, I guess I'll just
So
sit around.
it
you
sounds
know?
like it sounds then like your main problem is not necessarily the lack of gameplay, but just the fact that the gameplay we have right now doesn't really go smoothly. So you
Yeah.
can't get in and have just a good straightforward experience. If it was complete, if it was cleared of the bugs, and we had like this basic inventory and basic medical and basic mining and stuff, you would still feel like that was worth jumping into play.
Yeah, I mean, if it was as profitable as it used to be, where I could feel like I could spend 2 hours, make a couple million alpha UEC to save up to get a ship or something to play around in,
Mhm.
yeah, I'd do it.
So then, from your perspective, what do you think it is that do you think that newcomers are willing to overlook that stuff because they're so interested in this stuff? Do you think that maybe it's just a matter of personality? Some people are just more willing to look past those things. What do you think it is that changes you from somebody else who's still very excited?
I don't know. I would be curious to sit down with a veteran player that's been a backer as long as I have, and for reference, I've only been a backer for an active backer for about 3-ish years now.
Hmm.
So I'd love to sit down with a backer who's been a backer around the same time that I have been,
Yeah.
and see why they are positive, or why they are negative about the game right now. I'd especially be curious on the opposing viewpoint why they're so positive, because I just can't really see the positivity. Maybe my judgment's clouded, maybe I'm just feeding into the negativity. Whatever it is, I'd love to hear why they are feeling positive about it, because more often than not, I've heard people like myself say no, they're also not too excited. So I think as a new player, though, anytime you hop into Star Citizen, that first patch you hop in is probably going to be an amazing experience, because I still believe that first newcomer experience for Star Citizen is always going to be awe-inspiring.
Hmm.
I think it's after a couple patches you start getting that onset backer fatigue, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where I'm at, and maybe for some people that's sooner, for maybe some people that's later, others it may never happen.
Some
But
people it's a cycle, man. There
yeah,
is that long-term cycle that you're kind of talking about where you join the game, you spend a couple patches, you start to see the cycles, you see the patterns. Even, I talked to Sexy Biscuit about it last week. You kind of see how things flow with the PTU stages and the dead times and Evocati and all that stuff. But for me, it feels like a cycle. I think I would say
yeah,
at least it used to be like, I don't know. Every once in a while I look at the game and I'm just like it doesn't feel like it's in a good place. And that's probably why it's best to look at the overall health of the project over like maybe a 90-day period, or maybe not even like a 180-day period, like do half a year to really get an idea of where the game is, because some patches it feels completely dead, like it's just not going anywhere or doing anything, and then suddenly they let out some news and you're just like, "Oh, like when they started to talk about the combat changes in 314, everybody was like 314 sucks." And then 2-3 weeks before it came out, maybe, suddenly there were like these small little features that were actually pretty fundamental and you could tell had some thought behind them. And you're like, okay, so something was coming. It just, they weren't saying anything about it. And sometimes they put those things out and they don't quite have the splash that CIG wants it to have. But I do feel like there are definitely times throughout the year when I'm like, this is looking rough. And there are other times when I feel good about it. And that's
I
the current
agree.
state of the game. We're talking about the current state of the game and not necessarily the development of the game.
And the current state of the game with 314, I thought on the onset, we were in 313 going into 314. I thought 314 was going to be a patch that would carry its weight going into 315.
Hmm.
But, now looking back, 314 in review, so to speak, all the glitters was not gold. All of those changes, came with some other issues, and
Yeah.
we're still dealing with those issues today. If you're even playing in live right now, 314 was not that the pie patch was not that patch to really set off the standard for this year. In my opinion, of
Yeah.
course, but
Yeah. I think 316. You know what? Actually, I'm not going to say that because 316 is going to have. It's going to be crowded.
yeah, it
It's going
is
to be
going to be
crowded.
crowded, and I hope so. I hope it stays crowded.
So, talking about the development of the game, this is how you feel about the current state of the game. How about the development? What we're looking at the next 3 months, the next 6 months, what they're talking about for the next year. How do you feel about that side of things?
Well, specifically, and you'll see me looking over to the side. We had actually already discussed this a little bit, but uh, trying to find it
Well,
specifically here.
let me actually tell you some of the big ones that I think we
Mhm.
could focus on in the next like 6 months in terms of features. We've got
Yeah.
salvage is a possibility, refueling is a possibility, passenger transport missions are a possibility. We've also got a hovercraft rework. We've got personal hangars coming in, which means you can now start to store stuff and keep stuff in your hangars. Um, we will have, oh, sheesh, just a multitude of different interactivity options.
Mhm.
All of the hospitals will be completed. We'll be able to be selling things to stores that we can loot. So you're going to be actually making money off of exploration now. Um, they're going to have the new player interaction system. So the ship experience is probably going to be a little bit better. And cargo is clearly getting big work. They're doing the cargo overhaul. They've got the whole
Mhm.
series finally coming into the game. So there are like very, very substantial changes coming in the next 6 months. How does that stuff make you feel compared to the current game?
Well, and I think that's kind of a plague of how they were developing things before versus how they have their core gameplay teams calibrated now. You and I had discussed this, which is what I was just looking at and pulling up, of how they are having their teams focus on getting things completely done for Squadron 42 and then implementing those in the persistent universe. So I think as their development of things changes to be more of a focus on that, getting more complete things out and not just getting tier 0, but just fully implemented full stage 1 of something. I
Hmm.
think we're going to see a lot. That's going to be a more positive effect in the community and in gameplay specifically, just because we're getting a complete loop put in our hands
Yeah.
that, yes, might take a bit longer to get eventually into our hands, but when we do get it, it's going to be fun. It's going to be something in depth and something that we can enjoy for the entirety of that patch, if not a carryover into a few patches until we get that next gameplay loop added. So,
Yeah.
um,
The idea of doing a more complete game loop, I think. I know that initially that's going to slow down some things and it's going to be annoying, but like just looking at what's happened with other things that they've put into the game at T0 and how long they've taken to get to T1 or something. It's great that they're just gonna. I think I might have said this to you. It was kind of a smart comment, but the idea that now we won't have a bunch of T0 implementations sitting around. Instead, we'll have a
mhm.
bunch of T1 implementations sitting around. But to be honest, I'd much prefer that because at least that's gameplay.
Yep, yep.
So that is, I like that they're doing that in this way now, and I do feel like while there are some things missing with the medical system does feel like an example of what we should expect. It's not a T0 implementation. Maybe it's not quite up to what T1 should be. I think it's pretty good. I think it's T1, but it's definitely not T0. I guess you could say that T0 was just the med pens, but overall the idea is that they brought in this new foundational change and it has enough stuff supporting it that it feels like a full profession somebody can take on in the current state of the game.
Absolutely. And to answer your question, how do I feel about the project, 3 to 6 months from now, looking ahead? I feel better about it, specifically with what we just talked about, how they're reorienting the teams to work on gameplay loops in Squadron 42 and then putting those into the persistent universe.
Hmm.
Because of that, I feel a lot better about the next 3 to 6 months. However, do I think any of those gameplay loops are going to hit? I think besides salvage, no. I think salvage is going to be cool. I think when we see the vulture implemented, the reclaimer being able to have a purpose in game besides just being a hunk of ship, um, I think it'll be cool. I think salvage is going to be cool. I don't feel like salvage is going to be enough to carry us until we get that next gameplay loop added, or another gameplay loop getting to T1, T2, you know?
I think you're forgetting a couple.
I am forgetting a couple.
Refuel and
But
refine, man.
Refuel and refine. While those are going to be cool, until we get pyro, I don't think refueling is necessarily a needed thing just yet, because
Not needed,
we
yeah.
can always fly. Refining will be a little interesting, I would admit. Refueling, that's just a pyro thing, but refining, I don't know. I'm still kind of up in the air about that. When it comes to a lot of industry professions, I'm not very keyed in, because that's not the side of the game that I enjoy as much. So
I think refining, above all else, is just great because it's now going to allow miners to never have to return to a space station to make money. You now have the full ability to run a complete operation in space and have people never have to leave what they're doing. That's going to be pretty cool. That'll be the first time I think in Star Citizen we can do that. Besides, bounty hunting, but
yeah. No, it'll be cool. You'll have whole mining groups going out, somebody mining, some ship taking that to the refinery ship. If the refinery ship can't get it immediately from the mining ship, the refinery ship doing its job, hopefully a lot quicker than refinery stations do it. If not, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then cargo ships running it to places to sell them. It'll be a whole operation. It'll require all hands on deck, security included kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see how that turns out. You might be right. It might just be these might just be little something extras. But like, what would you say then is the next thing after salvage you would expect as a profession?
I think getting larger cargo ships like the whole series, it's not a new profession. I think it's just adding depth to cargo, specifically with cargo ships that are meant to carry external cargo. I would say probably cargo would be up next, because it's been a little unloved for the past couple of patches. As far as what the next thing they're going to add is, unless they have a focus on medical to bring it to its next tier with maybe the Apollo, I really couldn't tell you, man. I just don't think refinery and refueling is going to be it for a lot of people. I think for those people who are focused on those niches and they have ships that are focused on those niches, it'll be fun. But again, those are all industrial focused gameplay loops, we need something science focused, some exploration kind of stuff, or medical, or we need more security style stuff, more ground missions, different ground missions, things like that,
Hear me out. This is a prediction I made last year and was horribly wrong about. I'm gonna take a second shot at it here. I won't put my name behind it this time. Just some anonymous fellow off in the distance said this. Don't quote me. But what if maybe they decided with the new star map that they've got coming in, which they are now, they said on Star Citizen Live just recently, they're finally they've got the design done, they've got their ideas down. Now they finally want to start to implement and create the star map into the game, the new one. So like, I don't know, maybe Q2 of next year, maybe July, August of next year, we could see it. What if though, when they did that, and maybe it would be October or September of next year, but what if we did get to see it next year? And what if when they did that, they included the ability to place waypoint markers, to maybe do more deep space scanning? Maybe that was the introduction of exploration.
That would be perfect. Then you'd have exploration ships going out, finding mining nodes for these refinery, refueling ships to go out and do things with. And yeah, they could spearhead all of those operations, the security operations. Here's an outpost of enemies that just popped up and they're guarding a bunch of Quantanium, deposits. And there's a whole rabbit hole we could probably go into that. That would be awesome. And the ability for only exploration focused ships to do it specifically would be prime.
Yeah. And you have gameplay working on that side of things, right? But at that whole time, we're also going to have the vehicle tech teams, the audio teams, all them working. Maybe they're working on components at the same time. They get the radar components working. I don't know. It's just like there's so much that it takes to get Star Citizen to the game that it's supposed to be. But when I look at the amount, the tiny amount of significant features that they would need to add, the 2 to 3 features they would need to have next year to like expand that much, to a point where you can have the person exploring, the person mining, the person refining, and the person escorting all doing their own thing, that could happen within a year, you know? So
Absolutely.
that kind
And I
of,
think all of that will be key. I think all of that will be a lead up to going into Pyro, because we're going to want all of that in place to make Pyro as a place to be,
yeah.
because it's essentially what we're doing in Stanton on hard mode.
And these are the things that I was thinking in CitizenCon of this year. And I was like, this stuff is nowhere to be seen. People are like complaining that they're not showing anything at CitizenCon, but that doesn't mean they're not working on it.
Yeah.
So this kind of brings me then to not really a final question, but where I wanted to go with the original line of questioning, which was, what would it take to get you, let's say, besides the fixing of the bugs that has you sort of hesitant to jump back into the game, what would it take to get you gameplay wise, game feature wise, to get back in? This is not a functioning, or it's not an inventory system. It's not the medical system. It's not the A2, or maybe the next ship that comes in, the Redeemer. What would it be for you? Would it be the Polaris?
The Corsair, dang it.
Right, the Corsair.
Polaris would be cool, even though I sold mine and don't have it. But no, actually, to answer the question, it wouldn't even be anything within the persistent universe. I say what would get me back into the game is, I don't know, a game mode that I can hop in and play for an hour or two and not feel I would be putting myself in a bad position if I decided to log out after enjoying some time just playing Star Citizen mindlessly. Something like, I don't know, maybe Theaters of War would be a cool name for it.
This guy's looking for Theaters of War.
Yeah, Theaters of War would be amazing. Or a better Star Marine to play, you know?
When's the last time you played Star Marine?
313, 312 or 313, I want to say. When the bug was happening, when you had to reload your weapon immediately on spawning in because you didn't spawn in with a full mech.
Oh, God.
It's annoying. Yeah.
I think I'll give it a try on the stream here one of these days, because they made some improvements in 315.
Hell yeah.
So we'll see.
But no, to answer your question, what would get me back into Star Citizen right now would be Theaters of War specifically, but just a form of Star Citizen that I could play to not feel guilty about if I can only play for an hour or two, just scratch my itch, get me enjoying the game again, and maybe give me an excitement to hop back into the PU later in the week when I have a couple hours to set aside versus only one or two.
Yeah. You want something to wet your beak, before you
wet my beak.
Jump back in, right? So is that something that you want moving forward then? You always want a casual way to enjoy Star Citizen so that you don't always have to put an hour, 2 hours towards some half job?
Absolutely. I would love that. And I think a lot of people would love that too. People who are just kind of overwhelmed with the persistent universe, people who don't want to set aside 3 hours to make sure they don't lose their armor or their weapon or their subscriber armor or their one ship that they have or their special ship that they have. They just don't want to get into all of what entails hopping into Star Citizen and 315 and beyond, because death has meaning and losing stuff has meaning. People who just don't quite want to play that right at that moment or even period, give them something that's a little more casual and a little more fun to just pass some time and to increase the amount of people playing Star Citizen as a whole. And I think Theaters of War would be the answer to that, and I think a lot of people are looking forward to that kind of experience right now.
And luckily I think CIG has shown that they recognize that that's a thing with Theaters of War, with Star Marine, with Arena Commander, and some of the updates, like about the Simpod, right?
Oh yeah.
So like I think that's a pretty good idea and a pretty cool way to do it, where you're gonna have your ability to hop into this virtual world inside of the world and get to play some more casual versions of Star Citizen gameplay. So you could still it could even be an extra tool to party up with your friends. You got a friend who's in another star system. You don't want to fly all the way out there, hop into a match of Star Marine with them and play some shooting them up. So that's pretty cool. And I think that's pretty important. That's a good point to make.
Absolutely. No, I think as you're making the persistent universe a bit less accessible to people who just want to have a quick little casual experience for the week and just have a little bit of fun with a project that they love, I think, make the PU harder and then give us something to have a nice, easy, fun time with too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
balance. It's all about balance.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit shorter term now that we've talked a lot about the future. I want to talk more about 315 specifically.
Yep.
You said you weren't playing it, but you were watching streamers on PTU. I'm sure you've seen some of the YouTube videos people have been putting out. What are your thoughts so far on the update as a whole?
Medical system seems pretty broken, just right out the gate. I think it's cool that we have the medical system in place, but Star Citizen has so many bugs that just makes having this medical system and the meaning of death feel so much more painful because we're so apt to dying from strange, weird occurrences or bugs. That it makes it a lot more painful than it should be, or that CIG intends for it to be. And a lot of that is just poor foresight, I think, on CIG's part of why implement this kind of meaningful gameplay that has repercussions when you know the game is not in a extremely stable state. But it is what it is. I'm harping on things that many other people have already stated. I'm just regurgitating this at this point. So specifically the medical system, again, harping on what I said before, you want to take out your Cutlass Black and, go exploring or do some low flying or whatever, and you only have 2 hours? Well, you better make sure you take your ship back and park it, or else you're going to have the claim time on it. That armor that you had, you're going to need to spend 30-45 minutes flying around to go get more armor if you don't have any in storage. And okay, you're only going to spend 2 hours, you're going to lose the armor set on you. Now you're going to spend an hour just making sure you have multiple sets of your armor and spending all that money, and it's adding a lot of kind of job-like steps to it.
I'm gonna call you Casual Matt from now on.
Casual Matt, yeah. Well, yeah, I like enjoying Star Citizen casually just because it hasn't become that fully fledged game yet. So once it becomes that, I'll enjoy it hardcore. But until then, it's just casual for me, man.
I get it. I think that'll be a that'll be a constant debate of whether or not this has come in too early or not. I think maybe they're within a year of the time that it should be in. Maybe they're a couple patches too early, but overall, the small issues need to be figured out with the medical system. But I like the direction that it's going in. I like what it's doing to the game. I agree with you. I don't appreciate dying to some crazy glitches, but outside of the glitches, I do think that it's pretty good. I think I only have a couple complaints really, and that is one, I think it's too easy to use the medical tool. When they introduced all these drugs and the ability to balance the drugs and all that stuff, I thought they were going to put more emphasis on rewarding the people who took the time to learn that stuff, but they let you just do like automatic healing and stuff like that. I think they should take another look at that. And there are a couple other things just like that I'm like, I don't know. The med pens could be a little bit better too, but overall, the medical system seems like a solid addition in my opinion. And then the inventory system really, I'm actually mostly impressed by how much they did with the inventory system during the PTU phase. Because they originally said they had to cut some stuff during the monthly report, and they've just been adding a bunch more. It's been good.
I agree. I think I'm most impressed with the inventory system, and when I do hop into 315, it's going to be one of the first things I'll be excited to get to experience. I think medical is great. I think the way that they've implemented it at its current stage is great. I just don't agree with the timing. I feel like this could have been something they could implement in 316, 317, 318 even, mid to late next year, right before Pyro. I feel like they could have waited. I don't feel there was a rush to add this medical gameplay right now. I think maybe launching it with the addition of one of the Apollo variants would have been really, really cool to set the note for medical. So I just don't really see why they did it now unless they just needed something to put out or they wanted to get a lot of testing done with it. I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see their post-mortem on the patch. I'm sure they'll mention something about it, but there's got to be, there's got to be a reason they wanted to get medical, and inventory made sense because they were getting the entity graph done. They were doing the persistent streaming. Like, it made sense they wanted to get that in as soon as possible. But the medical system, maybe there is something very important that's happening in the next couple patches that required it. Or maybe they were just like, the actor status system T1 is done and there's no better time. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what they have to say. And you talked on the Apollo there for a bit, which is a ship that people were hoping would come in 315 to go along with medical, but unfortunately we have not seen. We got quite a few other ships going on in this patch, though. I think in my recent monthly report, I counted a total of 7 ships, I think. It's the most ships we've gotten in a... It's the most new ships that we've gotten in a patch cycle since 3.3, I think it is. Which is 12 updates ago. That's 3 years. So, for starters, I think that does say something about what they've been doing with ship releases lately, and that is that they haven't been pumping them out faster and faster like people have been saying they were going to, assuming they would. They've been kind of taking it easy, and this last patch has been sort of a ramp up this year. But it also just goes to show that they've gotten better at this, making ships at least. And I know some people don't like that, but I appreciate that they can make the ships that they've already sold to people faster now. So what ships are you looking forward to this patch? Because we got quite the spread.
We do have quite the spread. Personally, and you know me very well as a Drake fanboy and a hater of Origin, but
Gross.
I have indeed bought my first Origin ship. I bought the 400i. Actually,
You bought it?
CCU. I bought a CCU from a tourist to the 400i specifically. It's not applied yet. It will be applied here
That
shortly.
CCU is going to turn into a 400i to a Corsair. Watch.
No, actually, no, because the 400i is higher value.
It's more expensive. Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, so dang it. Somebody's not an info runner.
Somebody's just not a Drake fan.
Yeah, but no, it'll stay 400i. I've always wanted a luxury ship. I wanted an Origin ship, but I didn't feel any of them were a good fit. The 100i, the 300 series, they just all felt too small. The 600i felt too big. 890 jump was just no. And I think the 400i is a good middle ground. Unless they come out with a 500i, then maybe I'd CCU up to it. But I really like the 400i, something I can putz around in, go see the galaxy and style, and bring some ships on it and act like a fancy explorer. It's also like an explorer ship, which I was also very excited to buy.
Yeah.
And that'll round up my ships of all my explorers with the Corsair, the 400i, the Aquila. So I'll have all of those mid-size explorer ships.
You're going to be exploring with 3 ships at once?
Absolutely. Well, you can fly one of them. You can fly the Corsair. I'll let you fly the nice ones.
Oh, thank you. I know you want to keep the Origin ships to yourself. I know you are.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm very excited with the 400i.
Okay.
I now own the CCU to it. So that would be the one I'm personally most interested in. Of course, we have the Ion and the Inferno coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Not really my ships. They seem kind of cool.
I mean, how much use are they going to have right now? How many capital ships do you have flying around that need to get taken out?
Exactly. Yours. Whatever capital ship you are. That's the only one that needs taken out. So.
I'm taking care of that on my own. If there's a ground nearby, I got it covered.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, Ion Inferno seem cool. Redeemer seems super, super hyped. How do you feel about that one coming out?
That's an exciting one. I've said it multiple times. I've had several streams where I have like 3, maybe 2 people with me, and we want to do a combat mission, like a claim jumper mission, and I want to show them some good ship combat. And the Hammerhead's too big. Yep. And I guess you could take like a Constellation instead, but it's just boring, Give me something.
Yeah.
Give me something fancy.
Right.
So I like that we're going to get a gunship, a small gunship. I think that fits a really, really nice spot. And I think they did a good job with it, turning it into something that would actually benefit the game a lot more than just making another dropship.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. I do feel sorry for anybody who bought the original concept behind it thinking it was going to be a concept or
That's fair.
Dropship.
But now now they have a very expensive token, right? I mean, technically they could refund it for something better, but it is a bummer when you back for something like that and it doesn't end up going that way. And that happens a lot in this game because there's just so many things that are constantly changing. They find something out, they make a breakthrough, or some new tech gets introduced. It's the nature of long projects, I guess. But that's a bummer.
Absolutely, yeah. I know we have the raft coming as well. Well, 2 others on our list here are ships that are coming out, I guess, at the closer to the end of this year. So we have the raft. What have you heard about that so far?
an Argo ship, as most people know, either from leaks have been coming out for months now, or more recently on the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo trailer, they showed us a close up of a new Argo ship. Definitely not a mole. Looked like it was a little bit different from a mole. Um, Cargo related. We have a few different theories in the info runners and in our group, Astropub info runners, the SC Leaks guys. We talked a little bit, and a couple different theories getting thrown around, but just settling on the idea that it is definitely a cargo ship of some sort, and it's meant to transport stuff, whether that be the pods that you use for your prospector and your mole, whether that be like something that's specialized for transporting refined goods or mineral ores or boxes or what. We don't really know. We have like general sketches, but overall, this is looking like a ship that is focused on small to medium-sized cargo, uh, and I think it's coming at a time that's not a coincidence. We have the cargo rework coming up. We had the Constellation Taurus come out recently. We had the Starlifters come out recently. We have the Hull C and Hull A getting worked on. The Gatak Ryland, the Xi'an cargo ship, has recently been revealed. Cargo is clearly a focus moving forward. So I think we should expect to see that ship come out, along with some more information about the cargo rework. But that's a hot take. That might not be true.
That is a hot take. Hot tomato take.
Hot tomato
I don't know.
It's that hot sauce. Yeah. That freaking Tabasco Tamasco sauce.
Yeah. Keenan's Red Hot. That's what you can call the sauce.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll be cool to see another Argo ship, and I freaking love that size range. Anything from 40 to 80 meters is just like, give it to me. So I'm excited to see another Argo ship. I'm excited to see something that's focused on something other than combat in terms of a ship, and I'm interested to see the styling and how it goes. And we've got
absolutely
one other one that I know you're quite excited about, and we also saw a teaser for that on IAE as well, and a lot of people have been talking about it. It's an alternate chassis for what we already are using for our missile launching capabilities from the ground, but you've got something to say about this.
I do. This is one you're going to have to buckle in on. And I'll preface this by saying that the Info Runners will be doing an episode specifically on this platform I'm about to talk about. So go check that out. I don't know when it's coming out. We haven't even recorded. So I'll be on there, as well as SA Execute. I don't know who else is going to be on there though, but we're going to go very, very deep dive with it. But I'm going to cover on the surface just a bit. So the Atlas vehicle platform, you heard a little bit about it. You saw it. What are your initial thoughts on it from what you've heard so far?
To be honest, I haven't really heard much about it. All I know is that it is a modular. It is essentially, the ballista is actually part of this platform. The ballista is just a single module for this ground vehicle platform. It's the missile module, but we're talking about the possibility of troop transport, cargo transport, maybe radar dishes, components in general. Essentially, your ground version of the Endeavor, just very small, but we're talking about vehicle modules here, right?
Absolutely. So we have the Anvil Ballista, of course, which is the anti-air, mobile platform, and there's essentially two lines of thought when it comes to this Atlas vehicle platform that's been teased to us. Is that the Atlas vehicle platform is kind of the overall broad what the ballista is, but there would most likely be two different variants. There would be the up-armed kind of ballista style vehicles that would have some massive weapon in the back. Currently they have the anti-air missiles that could be some long-range artillery, that could be something else, some big part where that back half of the cab is taken up by some weapons platform primarily, or something else. But the Atlas vehicle platform specifically would be one that's maybe focused more on the ground combat aspect, the troop support and carrying aspect. So I would say right out of the gate we'll probably see 3 different versions. And I'm going to preface this by saying this Atlas vehicle platform that was teased to us had the front cab and back cab connected from what we saw, which leads into why I think we're going to see these 3 different versions of it. One of those is a troop transport where you can walk from the front to the back of the vehicle, and inside would have, I would say, at least 8, if not 16 seats in the back that's focused on troop transport. Maybe we have a turret on top like the ballista currently has for a little bit of vehicle protection. Another version would be a medevac or medical vehicle version with maybe 2 tier 1 beds on the inside. We see this with modern day armored personnel carriers. They have different variants like this. We could see a version like that. It might be just the lowest tier medical beds, maybe second tier up if there's only 1 or 2 inside. I'm not really gonna blue sky theory craft it. And then the third would be a command and control variant, one that can communicate with troops all across the battlefield. It would be where your mission commander sits to communicate with everybody, control the air assets and the Nova tanks on the ground. Would essentially have a radar dish, could work at spotting things a bit further out for ships or vehicles to hit, just to have a lot of command and control of the entire battlefield, essentially. So
Right.
I think that's what we're going to end up seeing, and I think this Atlas vehicle platform is a gear up for theaters of war, getting some more vehicles put out there to broaden a lot of the different combat vehicles that we already have, but also introducing vehicle modularity as well.
So do you think this would have any applications in the PU that are particularly useful? I mean, they're talking about outposts and stuff. Do you think we might be looking at the possibility of missions or even just small activities that require us to drive in between ground locations? Or do you think this is going to be still pretty localized in terms of ground gameplay?
I think we could. With the ballista specifically, we could have defense missions where you have to bring a couple ground vehicles and defend off waves of attackers. Maybe they arrive in ships, maybe they arrive in land vehicles, and you essentially have to defend some outpost. The ballista would be especially good for this. But as far as just in general troop transport for the ground, maybe it's a heavily fortified fortress that you can't fly that Hercules in, or that new shiny Redeemer that you just got. You can't blast down the doors, so you need to get in there a little bit more low profile. So you'd need a troop transport, which would be one of the Atlas vehicle platform variants. Maybe you are following that up with a medical vehicle in case any of your troops get injured during that fight to take over that fortress or that area that's heavily fortified. I think they do have, uses for sure.
Yeah, I guess all they have to do is stack missile turrets, or like I'm over here thinking, okay, we need, at some point we're just not going to care about going in on a ground vehicle. Like these ground installations will just drop bombs on them and take care of them. But then I'm thinking, well, okay, all they have to do really is like put double the turrets on these underground facilities, and most people would be like, I'm not going to take the time to do that. Let's just drop off. We already do it, right? We already drop off like 200 meters outside of their radius and run into the base or drive a cyclone in. So I could totally see like a troop transport like this being used for an expanded version of the underground facility missions.
Absolutely. And you can do some combined arms with it as well. Have your ground troops go in there in some vehicles, disable those enemy turrets so you can call in an airstrike with that Redeemer. You can get a lot of gameplay and a lot of role playing involved with it as well. It's not just I'm going to call in a C2 to drop me off and they're just going to go, do whatever they want somewhere else. No,
Yeah.
they can still have an active participation in it, but the troops have to go eliminate those turrets and take those out, and then sit at the front door to pick them up whenever they need a quick evacuation from the premises or something,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I could see it. That's okay.
yeah.
I'll give it the light of day. I think we did see this coming. There are like 3 or 4 different things on the progress tracker for ground vehicles in this patch. I'm willing to give it the time of day. I do hope that they put out and actually create the content for these platforms, because we were getting ground vehicle after ground vehicle with not much. They're focusing a ton on planets, but we're also still not getting that much content to use down there. And now they're also talking about a hovercraft rework. So I do hope that they start to build out more of the content that we can even use this stuff for.
Absolutely.
So that actually, I gotta say, we touched a lot on this stuff that was coming in this next patch. Real quick though, before we go, Just looking at the things coming up in the roadmap update we just got. I think one of the things that really sticks out to me, and we'll just touch on this quickly, new passenger transport missions, I think, really caught people by surprise. The fact that Star Citizen is talking about within, honestly, I want to say a month. What's the day? It's like the 7th of November. Within like 40 days, we're going to be seeing missions where players are picking up NPCs at space stations and transporting them to other space stations. That doesn't sound too impressive, but as somebody who's been playing Star Citizen for a while, that is crazy. And that came out of nowhere, man. They put that on their roadmap update, and I was just like, what? Passenger transport? Really? Like, I'm just surprised, yeah, they should have had it before this, blah, blah, blah. It's been 9 years, sure. But like, the state of the game does not lead to one to believe that this is something that they were close to getting. So that's an exciting one. That is an exciting one because suddenly touring is now maybe a possible, we forgot that. We were talking about salvage and repair and stuff. Touring might be a realistic profession next year.
Yep.
That was like one of the last things I expected.
Genesis Starliner, 890 jump has a purpose now for those high value transport missions.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. This might be one of those things where they drop in the T0 version and then don't touch it for 2 years, but we'll see. I'll be excited to see what they do with that in the next patch. And I think overall, 3.15 might be kind of like a patch, not enough to get you back in, but 3.16 does seem like it's got some cool things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But with that being said, dude, I think I've taken you for enough time. I really appreciate you coming in and telling us a little bit about like your hesitancy to get back into the game. That really, I was just going back over the last episode and that kept popping back up to me. I was like, man, talking to Matt recently, he was talking about this. This is something I've seen for years. On the Reddit, you'll see people, hey, take a break, come back in a couple of years. The development is slow. It can be frustrating. Hey, maybe don't jump into the game. Don't force yourself to play just because you want to. Like, take some time. It's interesting to get to hear people's firsthand what's going through your head and why you don't really feel like playing the game that much anymore, whereas other people really do. But I think it generally comes down to what you said. You just get experience with the problems and you understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, to anybody who's a bit newer to Star Citizen, don't be afraid. This will eventually happen to you as well. But go into that with the understanding. Take this as a note that if you do feel yourself getting to that point, take a week off and just wait until you feel that urge to get back into Star Citizen, because forcing yourself to play Star Citizen right now is probably the most detrimental thing you can do for people like myself and like you, Tomato. We've invested over $1,000 in this game. I often tell people I cannot afford to be burnt out on Star Citizen. I would rather take a break from this game for a year than I would force myself to play another 2 hours of Star Citizen and feel completely burnt out, because I value this game a lot and my money's been put towards it. So I want to make sure I mitigate any of those bad feelings as I possibly can. So
I'm trapped. I burn out. I burn out so that you guys don't have to. That's why I'm here. So if you feel like you need to take a break, do it, because I'm here not so that you can keep watching. But I will say also, it's not a universal feeling. And it's also not the only feeling that you get. I also am not entirely happy with the state of the game, but my excitement for the development and for what they're doing is just so ridiculously large that I don't really care. And I can jump into the game every week and still be excited. So it's not always universal. Not everybody falls into a rut. Not everybody gets sick of it. Some people constantly just persevere on. It's just a matter of who you are and what you're looking for. But that's about it. Episode 24 of the Launch Sequence Podcast. Another great talk, another good time with you, Matt. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out. Everybody who is here, Drazen is another leader of the organization, the Garden Interstellar Initiative. Shout out to all my tomatoes out there. Thank you. And we are doing a lot with newcomers, with veterans, with people who are just spending the last few months in game, teaching, learning, talking, playing, earning money. Come join us. The links will be all over my YouTube page. They'll be in the Discord server. They'll be basically anywhere you can find me. And it's a great group of people who are super, super kind, super friendly. They'll help you with the game, and they'll jump into other games with you. So definitely check that out. And if you would like to support this podcast, not only can you join Patreon, which generally just funds the entire business of Space Tomato Gaming, but also we've just included the possibility of supporting the podcast directly on Anchor, or I think Spotify. So if you would like to, you can chip in $1 or $2 there, tip us a little bit, maybe get Drazen a new microphone, maybe get me a better chair. I don't know, but all support is appreciated. I'd like to thank you all once again for coming and listening for this last week, and we will see you in the next one. Have a wonderful, wonderful time. Oh, and Drazen, you want to say bye?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, bye.
All right. Catch you guys later.